this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 78 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And today we're going to be speaking with Lauren Bealore, and our topic is politics and why having a seat at the table matters now more than ever. Now you may think, I'm an entrepreneur, I want to be an entrepreneur, politics don't matter. And to tell you the truth, I was like that at some point too, but think again, there's so much happening at a political level that's related to entrepreneurship, that's related to business, and it's important for us to understand what that is and how our voices matter and contribute to a lot of issues that are important to us. So this episode is one that I think will be really informative and at the same time inspiring and showing us that there are ways for us to get more involved, more politically engaged, and to start seeing changes arise in our communities on a local, state, and federal level. So Lauren is a corporate relations and event manager for the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. She also is a city commissioner for the City of Southfield's Total Living Commission and a precinct delegate for Precinct 19 of the City of Southfield. Some of the things that we talk about include the state of millennials in politics, why our voices need to be at the political table, especially in policy, donor, and lobbying positions, how to yield your upward mobility to benefit others, building strategic partnerships and raising money, challenges Lauren has faced in her career, the generational gap in politics, how to avoid burnout, and so much more. And Lauren also has entrepreneurial endeavors that she's a part of as well. So I don't want you guys to think that this is a major departure from our normal guest, but I also want to challenge you to be open to listening to someone who may not be necessarily directly in a creative or lifestyle market industry segment. Lauren's advice is priceless. Lauren's experience is one that we don't hear enough of, especially as a Black woman of color. So I applaud her for coming on the show and being so brave and so open with sharing her story. Now, if you want today's show notes, all you have to do is go to dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 78. I also invite you to check out our free resources by visiting dreamsanddrive.com/free. And there are a lot of cool tip sheets and worksheets and ebooks that you can get there as well that can help you on your dream driving journey. Last but not least, if you are listening to us online, make sure that you are subscribing to us wherever you're listening, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play. Please, please, please subscribe and make sure to also follow us on social at Dreams and Drive, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when you're engaging online as well so that we can see what you're saying and join in on the conversation. This episode challenged me. This episode made me really reconsider what is it that I'm really doing for my community and could I be doing more? I hope that this episode inspires you and motivates you not to be a backseat driver during the next 4 years that we're going to have with you know who. So yeah, let's get into the episode. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for being a guest on today's episode of Dreams and Drive. I'm excited to chat with you.
I am excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. As we were talking before, I feel like this is something that I say to a lot of guests nowadays. I'm just happy that we were able to finally connect. I know it took me a little while to respond to your emails, but never give up, right? You never know if somebody will respond. So I'm just happy that you responded back and we're making this happen.
Oh, yeah. I think it was fate. I actually saw an interview that you did with someone in the Her Agenda membership group. Mm-hmm. And then I saw a blog post you did for Amplify, and I also did one. So I was like, okay, this must be fate. I don't know, but Raina keeps popping up, and so is Dreams and Drive. So this is awesome.
Yes, I love Stephanie. How do you know Stephanie?
So she is also a member of the Agenda. I don't know if you're a member of Her Agenda, but if you are not, I would highly encourage it. I think you'd be a perfect fit. It's a bunch of dynamic women nationally. And I'm pretty much the only representation from Michigan, but a lot of East Coast women, a lot of West Coast, Atlanta. So I think you'd be a perfect fit. And that's how I connected with Stephanie. I found out about Amplify. And so it's just been a connection since then.
Yeah. So as you know, I love to start all of our interviews with this question, Lauren. So let's take it back, right? When you were a child, what inspired you? If I had to say who was Lauren, the 10-year-old, what would you say?
So I would say who inspired me specifically, Shirley Chisholm, without a doubt. The whole unbought, unbossed movement, especially in childhood, because we reenacted a lot of plays back then. I don't know if children are still doing that. I feel like as you become in your 20s, you just don't know any children for some reason, unless you have them. So, we reenacted a lot of plays, and, I feel like that was one person that I always admired enough to want to reenact. She had a lot of strength. She was ahead of her time. And ironically, I didn't know at the time that I would be getting involved in politics, but I could see why my trajectory led me to where I am today, because having someone like that I admire, without a doubt, probably played a role in that decision process.
So were there other things in your childhood that, looking back now, you could kind of see how you ended up on this path that you're on now?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like what?
I have always taken on a lot of leadership roles and positions, and it was definitely issue based. So the first campaign that I ever took on actually was a DARE campaign in elementary school. And, the 90s was really big into say no to drugs. So I led a campaign in elementary school. It was second grade, and we walked around the neighborhoods. It was a neighborhood school that was like an international academy that I went to.
And where were you located? Where were you growing up now? Where's the location?
That was, I went to all Detroit public schools, proud DPS student. Grew up in the suburbs though. So I don't really know.
I just want to get people the location, where in the USA was Lauren? Okay, back to your story. Sorry for interrupting.
Detroit. Oh, no problem. So, we would walk around the neighborhoods and carry posters, signs saying, say no to drugs. And then also too, we had to get our family members that we knew that smoked involved in the campaign. And I actually turned off 2 family members from smoking. So today they currently do not smoke cigarettes. So I guess mission accomplished. But, I feel like that first issue-based campaign got me involved in civic engagement and activism, which ironically is what I end up doing as an adult working on campaigns as well. It just is more from a political undertone and not necessarily a grassroots undertone. So I would say that played a role. Also to taking on leadership positions in student government as a child. And really, that was not even just as a child, just throughout my adolescent experience. I really am one of those people that, granted, I do not have a problem following, but I just feel like a lot of people needed a little leadership in my peer group. So I'm like, I should just take on this position. I always had the mindset, like, if I wanted to see the change, I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it. So I think all of those things have stuck with me. And we did another campaign actually in elementary school that was cancer related, for leukemia. And you would raise money and get a lunch to Olive Garden. And I am truly a foodie. So I felt like that was a win-win. Like I'm, going with an issue that I care strongly about, and I'm going to get a nice lunch in it. So I'm like, let's win, you all. I don't know. So, again, those are all things that definitely contributed. I'm not shocked where I ended up. I definitely did not see that vision for myself, but I think that's because I didn't see many people of color in the role within politics that I have taken. Many are elected officials, but the role that I've taken in fundraising and lobbying, I did not see that growing up. No.
So 2 questions. Number 1, how did you convince those adult family members of yours to stop smoking? Like, what was your pitch at that young age?
Let me recollect on that.
No, I'm just, maybe you don't remember, but isn't that amazing to think back that, since then they haven't smoked?
I mean, looking back, I think it's really the innocence and the purity of a child. I think that's what played a role. It's the fact that I'm coming to you telling you reasons why I think this is horrible. And I'm like 7 and how this affects not only you, but those around you, which I did find out as an adult that secondhand smoke definitely kills. I do know people who have lost family from that. So I feel like it was hearing it from a child, and maybe we need to go back to hearing things from a child, because clearly adults messaging, as we probably have seen in recent media, definitely shade to that Pepsi commercial.
Hashtag fails.
Yes, I think we need to maybe go back to hearing the voice of a child give that reasoning to some adults.
And you know what I thought about when you were talking about how you were always in student government positions is I was trying to think about what was I doing in elementary school, and there's 2 things that come to mind. So the first thing that came to mind was I think I was probably around 5th grade or 6th grade, and I had first grade reading volunteer committee. So what we used to do was the 5th graders would go to the 1st graders class and read to the 1st graders. And I designed like a whole permission slip for the students who wanted to be part of the program. We had a whole curriculum and all this stuff. And then the other thing I remembered I did when I was in elementary school was we had a bake sale committee, because our annual 5th grade trip was to the Bronx Zoo. And my friends and I decided that we were too grown for the Bronx Zoo. This wasn't going to happen. We wanted to go to Dorney Park. And if anyone who knows about that, it's in Pennsylvania. Have you ever heard of it? Like, I feel like you wouldn't know what Dorney Park is. But it's an amusement park.
Interesting though.
It's kind of like Six Flags. It's like
cool.
It's very similar to Six Flags. It's called Dorney Park. So I said, all right, we need to go to Dorney Park. We are in 5th grade now. We had these weekly bake sales. We raised all the money. And then you know what happened? We ended up going to the Bronx Zoo. They were like, nope, no Dorney Park. So it was but it's so funny because those things that we did when we were that age really laid the foundation for who we wanted, or not who we wanted to be, but kind of what our interests were at a very young age. But moving forward, so I know you went to Michigan State and you got a degree in social relations and policy, right? Why that? Why that?
So first and foremost, go green, which is a thing we say when we go to Michigan State. And then if it's a fellow alum and you see them, they say go white. It happens like nationally. We say it wherever state we're in. We see each other. So what made me want to choose social relations and policy? So I was a part of a residential program through Michigan State called James Madison College. It's specifically a program for people who take an interest in politics and policy. And so it's kind of has this reputation of being an elitist type of residential college. They weed you out your first semester. I found out about it because I did on-sites for my college. So I actually never had to fill out a college application. It's very interesting. I don't know. A lot of people are like, what? So I did on-sites because the school that I went to, they typically recruit a lot for colleges and universities. So whether it was at HBCU, which I applied to Hampton, and then it was MSU and U of M, the University of Michigan, all 3 I did on sites, and all 3 I literally just got in on site. So I never really technically filled out a college application. And so when I went and did the on sites, there was a representative from James Madison there, and he was like, I really would like to, they look at your resume and your credentials. And he's like, I really think you should try out this program, James Madison. So I'm like, I don't know what this is about. So I got an email. I did a college visit, and it's probably one of the best decisions I ever made. Everybody that works in politics, whether it's in Michigan, or nationally, in other states, probably was in James Madison, is 9 times out of 10. It's very highly populated with elected officials, lobbyists, policy advisors, and then nonprofits. I picked social relations and policy. We had choices. It's either SRP, which is what I did, PTCD, which is Political Theories and Constitutional Democracy, or CCP, which is Comparative Cultures and Politics, or you can do IR, which is International Relations. So breaking all of that down, because I know it's a mouthful.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what?
I know. I'm like, I feel like, let me please do not put the Black nerd label on there. But
no, you're schooling a lot of us, so go ahead, girl, go ahead.
So PTCD was more so for the conservative, right? There's current Republicans in the legislature that definitely were PTCD. Not many Democrats. It definitely were people who were hardcore about politics, hardcore about government, and hardcore about law. CCP were people who probably wanted to travel the world and do nonprofit work. International relations were people who probably wanted to take policy overseas. And social relations and policy were more so people who had a little bit more leg room. So you could have a legal background with that. You could also take it into politics. You could take it into an engineering degree, a teaching degree. There were a lot more fluidity with that major. And also it had a socialism quality to it. So I had a lot more opportunity to understand people, which I think plays a role in my job today or my career today. PTCD, ironically, is not about people. And that's a lot of times what our government tends to focus on. So if I were encouraging someone who wanted to go in politics, I would tell them to do that major if they were attending Michigan State. But that being said, that kind of is the gist of why I chose that. I wanted to understand people and relay it to a potential career role in that realm. So
following college, what did you do? How did you get your political career started?
So it was not an easy journey. I'm not going to sugarcoat that and make it seem like I just walked into it. When I first graduated from college, because I was actually going to go to law school, that was the game plan. It was probably stereotypically what most parents would probably want you to do, especially African-American parents. And I was going to study intellectual property law, so I was completely prepared to do so. I did a legal program at John Marshall Law School for the summer, so I was like, oh, I'm all set. And, I just feel like it just wasn't working out. I did a fellowship with a law firm in Michigan, and it was with warranty litigation, which was interesting, by the way. But I ended up figuring out that it just didn't feel right. It felt like I was forcing myself into this career. I wasn't doing well on my LSAT. I had to keep retaking it. And I was like, this just doesn't feel like if it's this much force into it, then this is not my career trajectory. And so I really sat down. I was like, I need to do some research on my own. I can't pick out a career based off what my parents feel would be best for me. So I did research and started looking into master's in public policy programs. In the meantime, to continue to save up money, I was working in sales on the side while I was starting to look into the program. And then I found a position where I could be a fellow for the Michigan Suburbs Alliance, which ended up becoming Metro Matters. But at the time, I was working on this project called the Millennial Mayors Congress. So I had never really... Millennial was not really coined at this time. This was like 2013. No one was really using it as heavily as they use it today. But, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. So there was only one spot. And I was like, this is going to be hard to get, but I'm going to do it. So I got the fellowship, and I ended up working on a program that basically leverages boards and commission seats with millennials. So this was more so on local government. And from there, the rest has been history. I kind of have always networked my way into jobs, which politics, you kind of have to do that. So long story short, that's actually, how I ended up getting into politics, but it did not start off that way.
So what did you notice, the first year or so, what did you notice that the reality was for millennials in politics at that time? Like, what were some of your experiences, and how did you know that this was a place you needed to be?
So that's a very good question, because in 2013, we still had the honor of having President Obama in office, and the country was very comfortable. Millennial voices were really not at the forefront or at the table in most legislatures, on the state level, definitely federally, which is for the most part still like that. And definitely in local government. You didn't really see too many mayors that were millennials, too many city council members. And then I think I started to see a little bit of emergence when Mayor Asia Brown got elected to be the mayor of Compton. Mm-hmm. First of all, the fact that she's taking on Compton, kudos to you.
That's a tough city.
Kudos. It's a tough city to turn around, to give a new reputation to. Mm-hmm. It is just so many things that go into that. And what I noticed from doing that program through Suburbs Alliance was that there's a lot of things taking place on the local, state, and federal level, but our voices are not in it. So where does this leave the future of politics if we're not at the forefront and we're not at the table? Mm-hmm. And if we're not engaged and we don't further learn about it. So there's going to be basically a discontinued use of knowledge on really how the legislative process works from the three branches of government. And I think it came to me when I was watching something on television. I don't know what this show used to be. And they were asking people, what are the three branches of government? And no one could say the answer. I mean, no one. It was literally flabbergasting to me. And not just as someone who works in politics, but someone who had fourth grade social studies. Like, I was like, I don't know when I watched Schoolhouse Rock. I'm a little old school. Like, it's very simple. So that's when I said, I feel like I need to bridge this gap, especially also being a person of color. Yes, I was the only one at that job. Mm-hmm. So I think that played a role as well.
You said so many important things, but one of the things I really want to touch back on is, what do you think, where are our voices not being heard, and how does our not being present at the table affect policies, affect the realities of our communities, etc.?
So many places. I do think we're getting a little better at the state level. Mm-hmm. In Michigan, we did elect a lot of young legislators. We have a few on city council, at least on the local level. And then on the state level, we have about, I would say, a solid 8 to 10 that range from 21 to 35. Both in the Democratic and Republican Party, because it's really not just about one party. I think that needs to be conveyed as well. But that's that leads into a whole different conversation. But to stay on top of the question, I think that's just looking at elected positions. But where I find it problematic, that I don't feel like it's conveyed enough to a lot of young men and women of color, young boys and girls, is we're not placing a lot of people of color in policy positions. I'm talking directors of policy. We're definitely not placing a lot in lobbying. I mean, you could literally Google like women in lobbying or African Americans in lobbying. And the last article that I found was from 2014 from a Black female lobbyist. They did an article on her. and she went to Howard. I mean, that's literally the last, actually that was 2009. It wasn't even 14. It was 2009. And
yikes.
It's literally like that's one article out of thousands of searches that we're not finding. That is extremely problematic. And the reason being is because lobbyists are at the forefront of the legislation that you see being passed.
So can you give us like a Dream Driver 101 course on lobbying versus policy for those who may not understand what it is?
Sure. So lobbying, basically there are multi-client lobbying firms. And then there are lobbying organizations. So currently I work for a lobbying organization. Our lobbying side is a C4, but we also operate as a C3. So we have a nonprofit component, which is very unique. Mm-hmm. The way that I usually explain it to people is if you watch House of Cards, Claire's character would be where I work currently. It's actually exactly where I work because it's environmental politics and policy. And then what Remy did, his character, shout out to Mahershala Ali, gorgeous man. So his character, Remy, he worked for a multi-client firm. Both have a lot of similarities as far as working to push the legislation that they want to benefit. The difference is a lobbying organization will push for the type of legislation that benefits their issue base. So for instance, if you look at Claire or where I work, which is Michigan Legal Conservation Voters, it's to push protection of land, air, and water. And it's holding legislators accountable. And you can do that through passing legislation or pushing out scorecard releases, et cetera. For a multi-client firm, that is where you would have clients. And this is where it gets tricky. This is where Koch brothers is able to do what they can do, because typically it would be through a business. So multi-client firms represent businesses like Walmart, General Motors, Ford. And then you also have lobbyists that work for corporations. So there's a government affairs person at every corporation, at a DTE. There's a government affairs person for Target or a Walmart. There are government affairs people for, if you look at a General Motors or a Ford, or a Chrysler, they all have government affairs people. So everyone has a lobbyist. And I think that is not conveyed a lot in schools or institutions of higher learning, because it makes it seem like politics is separated as an industry. No, politics is in every single industry. And the best way for people to learn that would be in working probably in development or fundraising within politics. So that is specifically my role. And working with donors, you learn a lot. You learn how money controls politics.
Okay, so let us teach, how does money control politics? And maybe talk to us from how it controls politics and then later impacts us as dream drivers.
So I'm going to say there's a lot of positives to it, because it can influence a lot of legislation. It can raise money for campaigns that you want. It basically helps get candidates that you want elected. Typically, most of your higher donors would be from the legal realm, from the medical realm, a lot of doctors, universities, and then corporations. Those are probably going to be the highest donors, your highest contributors, because they have the highest amount of money. On campaigns, you can cap the amount of money, or you have to cap. It's actually illegal to not cap. Some people are getting away with it. I don't know how. But you have to cap on how much you can be received. Whereas in lobbying, you do not have to cap that. So you can collect like $100,000, $500,000 contributions towards your organization or firm, and it's it's not an issue. But that helps you have influence on what you want to push. So the thing that we have to look at, we either are going to encourage people of color to work in the lobbying realm or in policy or become political directors, or we're going to encourage them to become donors. Either way, those both have influence and power. But just encouraging people of color to become elected officials, well, then you have to look at what party they're becoming elected official for. Are they in the majority in their state or in their city? Well, really more on the city level, it's bipartisan. But are they, who are they working with? What does their constituent base look like? There's a lot more that comes into becoming an elected official where you are more so a talking head than you're able to have as much control as you would want. So.
How do you think we became so apolitical, right? Or I don't know if that's the right word, but you know how you were talking about earlier how people don't even know what the three levels of government are or what the three branches of government are, or like, why do you think millennials now are so divided or separated from the reality of politics in our everyday life?
That's a good question. It's a conversation that a lot of political circuits are having right now. Because clearly after this past November.
Oh my God. I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget the pain I felt in my heart after election day. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever felt.
And, that's appreciated for me, hearing that from you, because it's one thing to feel it as a voter. I think it's a whole other thing to feel it as a voter and then someone that has to go continue to work in the same environment. I definitely try to keep a lot of my political opinions as far as my voting base, pretty separate. Like I don't blast it on social media or things of that nature, keep it professional. But I don't know. It just felt like this one was a blow because it let me know where we stood as a country. And I think it let me know how disengaged we were. It didn't feel like just a failure for whatever party that you were aligned with that didn't come out in a favorable result. But it let me know that we are so uneducated, and what really, as literally as how power works. And it just, sometimes you sit back and you laugh. You're like, this is ridiculous. And then other times you're like, I kind of want to cry because this is just really sad. I don't know where the future is going. And I think we've become disengaged because there's a distrust. I don't know if you got a chance to view 13th documentary.
Yes, I did. Okay.
So if 13th wasn't enough to lay out some disappointment, in some electeds that we believed in at the time, because we lived in a more cookie cutter 90s, everyone's happy and economically thriving period, then I don't know what else could. I mean, that documentary told a lot of truths that we didn't want to hear. And I think that further created distrust. Granted, I loved the documentary, but I think it even further created, because it's like, if we couldn't trust that particular elected official, who can we trust? And it's very disheartening. At the same time, I think educationally, we're not really pushing the truth about politics. I think when you look at social studies programs in schools, which that's clearly comes back to politics because they're in charge of education in this country, then, I think it's unfortunate that we're not really breaking it down where it will stick with you. For instance, the fact that people don't learn how to vote or how to, what a ballot initiative is, who their representatives are until they're 18. That's ridiculous. Why are we not teaching that in school? I don't really understand why you get to the booth and then you have to figure out how to do it. We should have sample ballot initiatives in textbooks. This is what a ballot initiative looks like in 6th grade. Here is how people vote on issue-based things. Here is how that would be distributed. How did the ballot initiative even come about? these are not things that you want someone learning at the booth unless you don't want them to be educated, which is clearly the case.
I wish you could see my face right now. I think it's the latter, right? Because I think also what happens, especially in minority communities that may not be of the socioeconomic standard by which, we have parents who may have voted before. We have parents who can teach us. I feel like, I went to a private middle school and high school, and there was a stark difference between the conversations that my peers were having when I went to school versus the difference of conversation that my peers were having back home in my inner city community. And I sometimes wonder if I hadn't gone to that private school, how would my social capital have been different, right? And it's a shame that I had to leave my community in order to kind of be exposed to the realities of the world, right? I remember I had friends who went to my school, the Revlon, that whole family, their kids went to my school, Models, those kids went to my school. So can you imagine if your parents own huge corporations, what you're talking about at lunch? You know what I mean? It's just a difference in conversation. I think it's also a difference in realizing the power of your voice and the power of your power, if that makes any sense. Just because your whole reality on life changes when you're having those conversations. And I feel like a lot of people just get left out, and it's not their fault, right? You can't really, you don't choose where you're born into. You can't choose where you're living when you're a young child, but it's something that I think it's sad. It's definitely sad for the realities of a lot of our neighborhoods.
It is. And, one thing that I could say I learned from, because I got into fundraising and politics at the age of 24, pretty young age to be handling the amount of money that I handle. I was given the assistant finance director position on a federal level campaign at that age, specifically because the candidate that I was working for wanted a woman of color. He felt that women of color are not typically in this role. And it completely changed my life, and it changed the statistics of how many women of color get into that particular realm. And I do think we need more people to leverage opportunity and resources, because that's really the only thing that separates certain socioeconomic classes is opportunity and resources. People get things through networking or who they know. And one thing I noticed, because we have this thing in politics called house parties, where they are kind of like mini fundraisers in someone's home, where they're inviting their close personal network. And I did a house party once for the former owner's family of the Detroit Pistons. And seriously, just to even be in the room and be around certain social capital and social enterprise that was taking place, it completely changed. I wouldn't say it changed my mindset, because I still grew up, relatively upper middle class, but it just changed my mindset about how to leverage or yield my my upward mobility and my career to be able to benefit others. And that means the only way I'm going to be able to do that with my community is to make sure my community is educated on what opportunities are out there. So I feel like that's, I don't know, from a spiritual place, God places you in certain settings, certain roles to maybe be that voice. And I just feel like that is kind of my personal passion, no matter what I'm doing, is to make sure that opportunities and resources are available for those that may be disenfranchised or disadvantaged.
Are there any other things that you think you've learned about yourself during, these years working in politics?
I've definitely learned that I have very thick skin. I always knew that. I'm pretty no nonsense, which you have to be in politics, especially if you start out on campaigns. You better have very thick skin. It's a whole different beast, a whole different animal. And pretty much if you can make it through that in a very high role, which high roles would be like a finance director or a campaign manager, you can pretty much set yourself up to do anything in your life. So I definitely learned that about myself, but I also learned how to manage my tolerance, and my patience. You know, I may have certain standards for myself, but everyone's not going to meet that. Everyone's not going to be professional, which I think these are general things that you learn in your early 20s of career building. You know, now in my late 20s, I really don't care. Nobody's going to, no one's going to cut my coins at the end of the day. My bills will be paid. So I definitely have a more calm sense about myself in my later 20s than I did in my early 20s. I was definitely more of a firecracker and a lot more feisty, and was like, I'm just going to tell you whether you like it or not. So these are things that I had to learn about myself. The work environments that I was in helped me to learn it quicker. That's the difference.
But what's something that you learned about, building strategic partnerships and raising money? Because a lot of our dream drivers listening in, even if they may not be in politics, there must be some general lessons that can be cross-applied across industries as well.
The only way that you are going to raise money is through strategic partnerships. And that's going to be making sure that you have a clear, concise mission and a clear, concise, strategic plan, whatever industry that's in, even if that's entrepreneurially, especially if that's entrepreneurially, you need to know what your brand is, because the brand is what people will buy into. So whether they're buying into a candidate or whether they're buying into an issue, whether that's civil rights or economic justice, or whether they're buying into a product that you have for a business, if you don't know your brand or you don't know the vision of that brand, then why in the world would they give you any money for? I mean, I'm just saying,
because your logo's pretty.
And you know what? Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Because I don't mean to go too far into that or drift too far, but we are definitely in a time period where visual appearance seems to be more important than substance. And I don't know who started that, okay? But please, let's cease and desist. Send out that letter to null and void that period, because I feel like it's creating a generation of pump faking. You don't really need to have any credentials or any substance, because as long as I have a website and a nice headshot, I'm going to make it. No, at the end of the day, there are still some foundational things. And I think we've accumulated that, especially in communities of color, because we constantly strive for upward mobility. We have been marginalized for so long, and some secondarily marginalized, if we include women, that we feel the need to do the pomp and circumstance when it comes to business and career. But at the end of the day, there are still some traditional old school methods of how to build your career, and that will never go out of style. So I feel like if that's anything that I include today, that's the most important, because I just am not really a fan of pump faking. I don't know. I mean, I think pump faking calls itself out, but I really find it disheartening, because if you notice, we have so much more branding now for people of color that own businesses or that are working in certain industries, but the statistics haven't changed. So, where, I'm just saying, if we still have a very low percentage that are in certain fields, or if we're still looking at the Forbes list of billionaires and there's 25 white men, then clearly these cute logos aren't doing anything. So we need to start creating strategic, creative, and innovative things of substance, because, a Black male or a Black female can definitely come up with a Snapchat or an Instagram. Not saying that it has to absolutely replicate that, but we could have done the same thing, especially because we are the hugest, the biggest consumption. We create the biggest consumption around media usage, and we're not benefiting from that at all. So
Do you see any other trends, especially from, the conversations you're having every day with people who are political donors? Like, what are the things that you think, or where is there space for us to really make a mark when it comes to entrepreneurship, in your opinion?
Okay, there's definitely two ways to look at this because in one sense, I could say there's space in every realm of entrepreneurship. But I think if I were saying where to be smart about it, seeing where the wave of entrepreneurship is going, the tech industry is definitely an industry that we need to start capitalizing on. Why? Because tech and innovation is definitely the new wave of society. And I don't know if you ever read the book Brave New World.
No, I haven't.
Okay, really good read, by the way. I read it my freshman year of college. We had an introductory read before we had even got into the program. And the book is basically about how technology will end up taking over people. And do I think that's possible? Absolutely. Because if you look at the Industrial Revolution, if we take a trip down history lane and we look at how we went from that industry into a more technology-based industry and how people lost jobs in that period, things of that nature, that's going to happen again. Like, history will repeat itself. It may take some time, but machines are definitely going to start replacing people. And if we are not at the forefront of creating these different opportunities through tech and innovation, we're going to miss out on capitalizing on that from a monetary standpoint. So.
No, I think that's a great point. And I feel like it also goes back to people getting educated, because I feel like some people just want to shy away from reading about tech. They stay very surface level, but there's so much more to be unearthed if you just dig a little deeper, right? And a lot of people are scared to do that. But Lauren, thinking back about your own career trajectory, what are some of the challenges that you faced in your career, your dream driving journey, and how did you work through those?
So definitely one of the challenges that I faced, if I'm being completely honest, I would say would be working with certain personality. Sadly, your best experience may not always be with someone who looks like you. They may not necessarily be rooting for you. That the spaces that I've actually thrived the most and had my voice heard the most were actually places where I'm typically the only person of color. And that's sad to say, but that's my experience. I can't say that's everyone's experience, but that's been mine. I do feel like that was a challenge when I've tried different routes where I maybe worked with more people of color. I've found that it was a pretty different experience. It could have definitely been the particular role for sure. But I think that has definitely been one of my challenges. And it could just be how it's placed in politics.
I find what you said very interesting. And I've had conversations with, other entrepreneurs in the space. And I don't think that's something that is only unique to politics, right? And I don't think at the same time, sometimes I don't even feel like it's purposeful, but sometimes there might even be like, you know how they say, we shouldn't compete against each other, but in the back of your head, it's like, she trying to outshow me, or, she trying to do better than me. How's that going to look? It's just, there's a lot that goes on, but in your opinion, within your space, why do you think that was? Or do you just think it probably was just the environment, or it just was this particular organization you work with? Like, what was the biggest difference for you?
I think it was a combination of the role and me not really wanting that type of role. For me, I felt like that particular role in politics was probably a little too mundane for me to do. So I guess if I didn't respect it, how could I actually do it? And I don't regret moving on from that. But I think it also, what I found from talking to other millennials in politics, it was a generational thing too. So, you know, you're not going to always find too many awesome Auntie Maxine Waters or, you know, a great, you know, Angela Rye or to work with. So it's just very difficult to pinpoint exactly, but I will say that I think I've found that, you know, if you're in your 20s, you know what I'm saying? You're like young, 25, and you're working for someone that's 45, another Black woman, let's say. Who knows how they take that? Maybe they feel like you've had it too easy. Maybe, you know, I can't say because I am not a 45-year-old Black woman, but I don't think like that because I think it depends. And maybe this plays into a role of what some entrepreneurs have said as well. I don't feel like when I'm doing work or if I'm pushing towards my ambition that there's a competition. Like, I work in my own lane. I don't even see anyone else in that lane. Like, my competition is literally myself. So whatever I did last month, I have to do better the next month. Like, that's just kind of how I operate. Like, it's not going to be enough for me to ride off of what I did 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It's like, we need to keep moving forward. There's a mission here. There's a vision here. And I think that's, if you know yourself and you know your purpose and you know your value, then you're never going to see it like that. But everyone's different. Everyone has different trajectories. And I can say that, you know, very calmly and not in a shady way because, you know, I'm much older. So it's like, not much older, but, still in my 20s, but, you know, now at 27, almost 28, I can say that, you know, maybe that was just something that took place in your life that made you want to act that way, towards someone else that represented the same demographic as you. So.
And you know what I think? And I think there's a generational gap across, you know, let's say backgrounds. So I even face this sometimes in my 9 to 5. I think that it's hard for millennials, and I'm going to say this coming from a creative background, you know, from a creative marketing background. I find it very difficult. I don't know if it's because I have a baby voice or whatever, to get people to take me seriously, right? I feel like, I don't know if it's because I smile a lot. Like, do I have to have a rest in bee face, you know, when I walk into a room? It's just very hard. I think that people see me as a child at times, and it's like, you know, hey ladies, or hey kids. I'm like, I'm not a kid. I'm 25 years old. I've been working in the real world now for almost 4 years. Like, it's, I think there's also just something that's happening with the generation above us, because their kids are still, you know, living at home. In their mind, I feel like they see us as extension, like we could be their children in many ways. And I just think the way that our world has evolved, people are maturing later. I don't know. But I just find that I'm also just finding that it's very hard for people to take, you know, they probably take me seriously, but I don't view them as taking me very seriously unless I present myself in a certain way. But then it's always like, oh, wait, how are they, you know, how am I coming off if I present it this way? So I just think there's a lot that we as millennials, millennial entrepreneurs, millennial people who want to be in power positions sometimes have to juggle.
Yeah, I do. I will say I felt like that definitely sometimes in my early 20s, first starting out in my career. But I think that's what challenges you to be greater. Like, for me, I always want to be greater than whoever I worked for. So whatever I have to do to move at a faster pace than you did, I'm definitely going to do it. Especially if you were somebody who was lackluster, then I'm definitely going to try to do that. But I would say now, and I don't know what happens when you turn 27 and you said you're 25, and I feel like you're about to feel this, but please believe me, you know, we're going to reconnect when you have your birthday in 2 years, and I'm going to ask you, but I just feel like life changed. I feel like I finally had, you know, my first step dream job, which is to work in the role that I work in now. And I literally ended up somewhere where not only can my voice be heard, I'm not micromanaged. I'm able to just do my job and get it done. I work with very respectful people, and it literally is a blessing. And I'm not saying that it was always like that, you know, years prior to, but I just feel like now it was like, I'm at the point where I have proven myself. And I would say that even in the business realm as well, you know, I used to have to go to networking events to, you know, push, my nonprofit with my co-founders, YAB. You know, you really had to like go above and beyond. And I think that's something that other generations don't understand about millennials. We definitely want what you have, but it's like you want us to go above and beyond to get it. And that's okay. We'll do that, but we're going to do it 10 times faster than you would have. So, you know, I think that's kind of what I'm feeling now. It's like, I feel like now, you know, you have people asking you for opportunities or you for plugs. And it's just a completely different feeling when the shoe is on the other foot. And, you know, you feel like a weight is lifted, that you don't have to overexert yourself to prove your worth. You're like, I'm a whole adult. And you start to become respected as such. I would definitely say it was not always like that, but I feel like when I turned that age, everything became golden. I don't know.
We're going to check in. But as we wind down, and I'm just so sad that we didn't get to talk more about YAB, but can you tell us a little bit more about it's a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So myself and two other women who also attended Michigan State University, we saw that, you know, a lot of our peers were doing a lot of different things in the business sector, creating startups, organizations, or just doing things from an entrepreneurial foundation. And we didn't really see them being supported through media outlets, publications. You know, at the time when we started, it was 2012. And, you know, there wasn't really this big thing, or there was no Black Girl Magic hashtag. There was no Melanin Magic hashtag. There was nothing that was really fully supporting a lot of women of color in business. And so that is what made the three of us start YAB, because we wanted to house startups owned by women of color that were mainly millennials, and provide these resources to them, make sure they have pipelines to funding, make sure that if they don't want to have to pay to open up a space and pay that rent, that they could possibly use a co-working space, you know, making sure that they were not left out of the room that the table was in, but making sure they had that seat at the table and they were leading the discussions or conversations at that table. And I think that's kind of, you know, all of it ties in at the end of the day. You know, my passion for wanting to support women of color in business and my passion for politics is the same passion. It's just two different realms. It's wanting to make sure that people of color have opportunities in these realms where it's typically a 1%. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of YB. I gave you the short version.
So what's next for Lauren? Where do you see your journey going? What's the next stop on your trip, your dream driving journey?
So I definitely see myself utilizing my background, having worked on the local, state, and federal level, to basically act as a kind of a liaison to my community. And one way to do that is through political correspondence. I've always had a love for political correspondence. And I did it. I did a news segment 2 years ago through our Channel 4 WDIV Live in a D segment. And It was the greatest feeling ever. It was extremely exhilarating to be in a green room. You got 15 minutes to prep. You basically go in, you're on the air for 15 minutes. And, you know, people who do that as political pundits, analysts, or correspondents, they get paid, a whole year's salary just to wake up and do that for 15 minutes. But you get to hear your voice and you get to relay the type of message you want. And I just feel like we don't have anything currently that bridges the gap between popular culture and politics. And that's ultimately what I want to do.
And I think that's a great way to connect with current millennials, because you see, like, you know, Beyonce posts Black Lives Matter. Everyone says Black Lives Matter. So, you know, it shouldn't only have to be that those are the ways that people are paying attention to what's going on in the world, but we definitely have to find a way to start reaching, especially our younger generation. So people who aren't even millennials, like I wonder, what are these current high schoolers or current middle schoolers thinking about? You know, where do they see their trajectories going? So it's definitely something that we have to think about. How can we solve that? Because as you said, policies was changing, you know, what's going to change our communities, and we have to figure out how we can influence that policy as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's go into our lightning round, Lauren. So I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. And remember, this is going to stick with our whole dreams and drive metaphor. Okay?
Okay.
All right. The first word is park.
Pause.
Reverse.
Backwards.
Neutral.
Stability.
Drive.
Forward.
And if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So Lauren, tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road.
3 things I would say that they need in their toolkit. One thing is they need intentionality. Mm-hmm. Another thing is tenacity. The third thing would be vision. I think all 3 of those things will get them on the path wherever they're driving to. Mm-hmm. And they will reach that destination and be good to go. Hopefully it's a beach.
Right? At the end of the day, you do all your stuff. You just go and relax on the beach. Let's listen to the waves. Cause that is important, right? Relaxing is so important. And knowing that there is, we all have dreams, but we definitely want to have a life beyond the dream as well. Make sure you're well-rounded, because you don't want to burn out. And I'm definitely sure you've probably seen people who've burned out. I could imagine that politics can get very stressful, right?
Yeah. Self-care is definitely important. I have burnt out myself. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of my support system, whether that be my parents or friends, kind of tell me to wield it back a little bit. Because, I definitely want to go full force, but I realize that I have to take breaks for myself. So my way of doing self-care, I have self-care Saturdays and soul Sundays. It's literally what I created myself. But, I'll go to the movies sometimes just by myself and, for a matinee. Granted, that is now the price of the evening. So I don't really understand the purpose. But, I'll do things more by myself, because especially when we start getting into later years in our life, where you might be building a family, I can't get that time back. So I'm going to need some time.
Enjoy it now, right?
Yes. My mom tells me that all the time. Enjoy it now before you have kids.
Definitely. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Lauren. I will be honest, I was a little bit nervous going into this because politics is not my foray, but you definitely taught me a lot. And I hope that our dream drivers as well realize that you don't have to be scared of, entering into conversations that you may not feel 100% are in your comfort zone. And this has just inspired me to think about ways that I can even start being a lot more intentional and a lot more aware when it comes to these issues.
Oh, that's so awesome. First of all, thank you for having me. But secondly, that makes me feel amazing, because that is literally my solo life mission. If one person walks away and they feel like they would want to be engaged, then I feel like I've done the right thing in life.
What's one thing that, what's one takeaway, or what's one thing that we all can do to start being more intentional about, our political, I can't think of the word. I'll edit that in later. But what's something that we all can just kind of take away and put into action in our own lives?
Yeah, I think you were looking for engagement.
Yes.
But, one thing we can definitely do, a lot of the major decisions that affect your everyday life actually happen on the local level. So when I was working for Suburbs Alliance and I was working with the Millennial Mayors Congress to try to get more millennials on boards and commission seats, I actually ironically became a commissioner. So I'm currently a city commissioner. It's an appointed position. So that's one way to get engaged, but there's a lot of opportunity to create what you want to see. So I created a program through my commission, our Southfield Ambassadors program, to basically get more people of different age brackets engaged in different ways in our city. Basically the synopsis of that. Now we have an intern, we have a younger, before it was a lot of seniors that were involved in our commission. We have another millennial that I love working with as my fellow commissioner. And that's a great way to get a scope of how government works or how it can directly affect you. I think, especially if you live in a major city, that could be very helpful. Another way to get involved on a local government level, but that has state and federal impact, is to be a precinct delegate. You're basically the messenger. You're conveying a message to, your community from the federal level. And the precinct delegates played a major role at the DNC this year. Or really the RNC, that you play a major role at your conventions for delegations because you contribute to votes. So I like to encourage both of those because most people don't think to get involved as a commissioner or as a precinct delegate. Precinct delegate is elected. So, if any of your listeners are part of my district, hello, thank you. Those are definitely the first steps to getting involved and really could lead to a plethora of opportunities after. So feel free to go to city council meetings, set up a call time session with your mayor or your state representative, go to their coffee hours. These are all ways to know what's going on and really to make your voice heard. And the more they see it, I bet you it'll have a different outcome. So
thank you for sharing that. And if there is an increase in precinct delegates in the United States, we have to owe it to you and the Dreams and Drive podcast.
Yes, I love it.
All right, Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I look forward to talking to you again, especially on that birthday.
I will be enlightened by then, and I will give zero fucks. All right, so that's a wrap for episode 78 with Lauren. I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing her dream driving story as well as her keys to success. And I also hope that you just enjoyed the topic, politics, and why having a seat at the table matters now more than ever. There's so much that I learned by listening to Lauren. I know that we don't talk about this topic a lot, especially within the entrepreneurial circle, especially within the creative and lifestyle entrepreneurial circle. So we gotta challenge ourselves, and we got to really, really, be open to learning more about what we do not know, because what we do not know will affect us, but we won't know that it affects us because we don't know about it, right? If you want today's show notes and you haven't already checked them out, just go to dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 78. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, wherever you listen. Please hit that subscribe button and also share this episode with a friend. There's so many things that Lauren mentioned. I don't want this episode to go unheard. So if you really felt empowered, if you felt like you learned something, please, please, please share this episode. Share the link to the podcast. Tweet about it. Use the hashtag Dreams and Drive. Tag us at Dreams and Drive, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Please, you guys. I think this topic is so important, and I want a lot of us to really start questioning the way that we're engaging, the way that we're talking about politics and entrepreneurship, and just thinking about what really controls power in this country? Who controls power? How can we be more powerful? And as Lauren was saying, we really need to have more people who look like us in these type of donor, lobbying, and policy positions. I'm going to close out this episode with saying thank you to everyone who has continued to be a supporter of Dreams and Drive. I'm so excited about the future of this podcast. Thank you to everyone who filled out the survey. If you want to fill it out, if you still want to leave feedback, you can still do so. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/survey and let me know what you think about the show. I'm looking forward to the next few episodes. I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 79.